Welcome back to Mira Business FM. This is Daybreak with me, Inzamam Rashid. It's just gone 11 minutes past 12. A very warm afternoon to you. Now, I don't know about you, but over the last week, I've been pulling my hair out every time I've tried to download a file, upload a piece of audio, or even stream the Asia Cricket Cup, which is happening right now. And I'm sure I'm not alone. WhatsApp calls dropping, Netflix buffering, and at the worst possible time, business Zoom meetings stuttering as well. It's been a frustrating few days for anyone trying to get things done online here in the UAE. The culprit, well, a series of undersea cable cuts in the Red Sea. These cables are basically the arteries of the internet, carrying the vast majority of the world's data. And when something goes wrong with them, whether it's a ship's anchor dragging across the seabed or something more deliberate, well, the effects are felt immediately. Now, for businesses here in Dubai and across the region, the slowdown hasn't just been an inconvenience. It's hit productivity, delayed cloud services, and cost real money. For individuals, it's disrupted daily lives, entertainment, and even the way that we connect with loved ones abroad. So today we're going to dig deeper into what's actually happened, how long it might take to fix, and crucially, what this means for the UAE as a global business and tech hub. I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by Dr. Sarath Raj. He's the project director at the Undersea Dubai Satellite Ground Station. He's someone who knows exactly how our digital infrastructure works and how we can build resilience when things go wrong. Dr. Raj, thank you so much for joining us at Mira Business FM.
Thank you, Insamam, for having me here.
So what happened? What happened a week ago? Can you give us an insight into exactly what went wrong?
Yeah, basically Red Sea is a choke point for internet in around the Middle East, and these cables are passing through these small straits, and has a greater ship moving in these particular locations. And as you clearly mentioned, the anchorage of the ships and the fishing things which are actually happening in this region has actually cause some kind of a cable cut. And yes, there are speculations for the sabotage. I'm not denying for that also, but ultimately we have identified that this is due to an human accidental error on the ships due to the reason why which the Red Sea cable has been cut. And we faced a lot of issues, as you mentioned in your previous session.
We'll come on to the full details about kind of what's happened and the impact it has, all that kind of stuff. But I've got to ask the question that everyone wants to know. When is the internet going to be working fine again?
Yeah, it is little tough to answer. However, I can say that it probably between 2 to 6 weeks. The reason being is that we need to send the cable repair ships to this particular location, identify it, pull it, and splice it, and then repair it. So it will take around 2 to 6 weeks time. However, globally we have only 20 to 30 ships which can able to repair these cables which are underlying in this Red Sea.
Okay, so we'll come on to that very shortly. So it could be weeks before the internet is properly up and running again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the technical details and some of that repair process that you just touched on there, Dr. Raj. How are undersea cable cuts typically detected? How did they figure out that, okay, the internet the cables have been cut? What's the process from noticing kind of slowdown to identifying where a precise cut location is?
So basically what these optical fiber cables transfer the data in the form of lights. So that travels at about 200,000 kilometers per second. And once there is a fault has been identified or a cable cut has been identified, then what we do is that we send the cable back and the data back to these cables, and we identify the precise location where this particular data is reflecting back to us. So once that location is been identified, then we will send the ships to this particular location, and the ROVs, that is remotely operated vehicles or robot operated vehicles, which will go underneath and pull the cable up and then splice it, and then they do the repair and so on. That's how it takes time, and how we fix this type of cable cuts in this Red Sea.
And the specialist companies around the world that do this kind of a role, and as you mentioned, there are only a very few companies and ships that actually do this kind of work. Is it a logistical and engineering kind of challenge that is ongoing in the Red Sea?
Yes, it is a challenge which is not only for Red Sea. It is all it is a challenge for always for submarine cables. These submarine cables have a higher capacity than the satellites has, and if you look at these cables, which is moving around these different locations, around thousands of cables which are moving around this Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea and Suez Canal, and there are many cable cuts may happen, but the records indicates that most of the accidents are due to human errors, or in terms of shipping anchorage problems, or due to the fishing issues which is happening in this particular location. So as you clearly mentioned, we need time for this to identify these cable cuts, and after that, we need to get the permissions from these territorial waters. That also takes some time, and we need to wait for the permissions, and then we need to send the ships to this particular location. So obviously, yes, it takes more time to rectify these cables.
And what kind of vessels and equipment is specifically needed to go and make this repair work happen?
Yeah, there are cable repair ships, especially located at different points in the Mediterranean Sea or in terms of any territorial waters, and we will be using an ROVs, which will basically able to identify, that is a remotely operated vehicle, which will basically able to detect the error where this particular cable has been faulty, and then we use our bars and jigs to pull it back, come back to the ship's floor, and then we splice it, and then we repair the damage which is actually caused for this particular cable.
So, look, you mentioned a lot of kind of logistics there as well, particularly talking about even going into international waters and getting the permission to do all of that. You've said 6 weeks that it could potentially take to get these cables repaired. When just listening all of that, can it really all be done in 6 weeks, or do you fear that actually it could take a lot longer than that?
Particularly, it will be about 6 to 8 weeks, but we have those ships which are literally placed at different locations in the territorial waters, and they help to get the repairs done. However, as I mentioned earlier, the permissions from the government is mandatory to move along and to identify these faults. So permissions, the government will do faster permissions, and this will move faster, and so that we can able to complete the process within 6 to 8 weeks, probably.
Let's talk a bit about the impact that this has had. You personally, have you noticed it? What have you noticed over the last week?
Yes, the impact as a common man, I face the problem in streaming or video calls, and for financial transactions, some of my apps are not loading. That helps me to understand there is some problem in the internet, and then I checked on the providers, and they also tweeted in the platforms, social media platforms, that there is a delay in this time. And yeah, that's how as a common man we can able to identify that there is an internet problem. But in case if you're looking at as a presenter, that when you are trying to stream your video, you might have faced the delays, as well as as a businessman, every cloud services is being affected in this particular region, and that actually affects the financial transactions, and some of the aviation operations also getting affected due to these cloud services being affected. Mostly in the Middle Eastern region, the banking, e-commerce, and the cloud services are getting affected due to this internet delay.
And this is the thing, if I look back at some of the things that I've noticed myself, I've been trying to stream the cricket. Okay, it's happening here in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, so I probably should just go to the stadium and watch it, but I'm struggling to stream the cricket. I tried to make a 50 dirham payment to my friend for a paddle session. That really struggled to go through. That took a long time. Even just loading things on Instagram, downloading pictures on WhatsApp, sending voice notes. It has been intense, and it kind of goes up and down, peaks and troughs. It's working great, and then it completely stops working. What's the kind of reason for that? Why is that happening?
Okay, in summum, you imagine you're moving on a heavy traffic Sheikh Zayed road, and you identified a heavy traffic. Then what you will do?
You slow down.
You slow down and you identify a small pocket road and you move. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Is it what basically the telecom providers are basically doing? They do have a cables for a particular region. However, in case if they identify there is a cable cut, then the data will be routed through different other cables. So that cause these delays and the latency issues. The latency. So when you try to transfer the information, it will get delayed. So if you have a lower latency, that means you get your data at a single point of time or a fraction of a second. But if you identified there is a cable cut, then the providers will transfer the data through some other cables which are already carrying some of the data, and that causes jamming. That is the reason why you basically feels shorter or heavier time or higher time for loading your apps, sometimes your internet and your Instagrams and other pages. Yeah, that's how it happens.
I even have this shows a bit about me, but I have cats, and my cat toilet is connected to the internet because it's automatically rotates. Even that has been disconnected. Now I physically have to clean the cat litter tray, which is very annoying. Anyways, that's just my first world problems. You mentioned there's some of the service providers, so ISPs like Etisalat, obviously Eand, and international platforms like Microsoft. How are they coping right now? What are they doing to reroute that traffic or to mitigate the impact?
See, definitely they will be having a backup plan. Definitely, as I mentioned, they will be having the data backup routes which will be using through other cables. However, as I mentioned, for RSA lines, what we need to do is that basically we need to have a satellite backup data so that that can be, in case of an emergency, we can transfer the data through satellites. But the capability of the satellites are comparatively lesser than that of a cable. So that is the reason why we always depends on the cables for transferring the data. So sometimes the cables are lifespan of the cable is basically designed as for about 25 years, but sometimes it becomes obsolete, the new technology comes into picture, and we need to utilize the new concepts. So what we do is that we commission the new cable system for this particular data packet transfer in this region. So it takes some time, but however they will be having another data cables which can able to transfer the data, but it will be taking some time, and you need to reach to that particular latency. For that it will take some time. Yeah.
The reports are suggesting that they are rerouting through alternative
routes.
Paths. And Microsoft did say themselves that there was increased latency. How are businesses, especially those dependent on cloud services, real-time data, trading companies, logistics, or local SMEs even, how are they all being affected in this, Dr. Raj?
See, as I mentioned, I'm also another victim, when we are trying to download our cloud services, because all our data has been stored in the cloud services, and we faced delays, to load and to get this data for our work, and that is also getting affected. But we understand that this is a problem. So especially financial services, e-banking, And what could say is that, as you mentioned, the aviation services, that is also getting affected. So they might be having some kind of a backup source, as we mentioned earlier, through getting some of the satellites, but that will not be fair enough. But if you look at the entire coverage of the internet data globally, 97% of the data is being routed through these submarine cables. So, and these cables are like, small diameter of your hair. So it's a small optical fiber. So once a small cut is being made, it is very difficult to store or send the data to other location. So that increases the latency, and obviously you are ending up the problems. Obviously, when you load the pages on financial sectors, as well as the apps, basically, example, the stock brokers, okay, they also face this issue, because they are doing their conversions and everything in a faster pace of time, in a quick fraction of a second, the stock markets especially. So if this internet causes delays, obviously that will affect the stock market too. So that impact the financial implications in the region too.
Dr. Sarath Raj is with us this afternoon, talking to us here live on Mira Business FM on Daybreak with me, Inzamam Rashid, and we're talking about the internet issues that we've all felt over the last week in particular. Just before we go to a quick break, Dr. Raj, do you have kids? You got family?
Yes, I do.
So are they away from the iPads and the phones and all that kind of stuff because the internet is bad? Or?
No, my kids are small. I mean, they are 3.5 years. So obviously they are using it. So I can't avoid that also. But still, I do have other devices which are handy, so that,
But I bet that the streaming has been good, because you can tell them, look, it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Sarath Raj with us here in the studio, broadcasting live to you from the Art of Living Mall. This is Mira Business FM. We're going to go to a short break, and then when we come back, we'll get the headlines, and we'll carry on our conversation about the internet woes that we're all dealing with here in the UAE and further afield. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to Mira Business FM. 12:33 is the time. This is Daybreak, and Inzamam Rashid with you for the next hour and a half. And we are talking this afternoon, firstly, about the internet connections, those internet woes that we've all been feeling wherever you are, in your office, at home, trying to stream Netflix in the evening, even the impact that it's had on the 5G data as well across the UAE and further afield. We are talking all about that. Remember, if you want to leave your comments about this story, you can do on the live YouTube feed. We are there, Mira Business FM. Hit the subscribe button there whilst you're at it as well. And it means you get all these fascinating interviews directly to you. You get notified about them, and you can watch and listen to them wherever you are in the world. To help us unpack all about the internet situation, we've got a very, very interesting and quite frankly, a very clever guest in the studio this morning who can unpack all of this for us, Dr. Sarath Raj. He's the project director at the Undersea Dubai Satellite Ground Station. We've been talking a lot about your opinion on when this will be fixed. Potentially 6 weeks is what you're suggesting, Dr. Raj. Let's talk a bit about the business and economic angle of all this disruption. From a business continuity and kind of economic standpoint, what are the immediate losses or disruptions to companies in the UAE that are facing kind of slower connectivity?
So most of our financial institutions like stock market as well as the apps and the banking sector will have major impact in this internet disruption, as well as the aviation security. And if you are looking at the financial implications, and if you are one day you can say that $100 billion is what your loss when you have a single cable cut in this Mediterranean Sea or on a Red Sea region. So if that persists for a prolonged period of time, this will come as, what you are paying for repair and everything that may come to the customers. That is a tricky part, and, that we may not be knowing at the moment, but, later we'll come to know about that impacts also.
That's an interesting thing. Who actually pays for the repairs? Because this happened in the Red Sea, just off the coast of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. It's surely going to cost a lot of money. Can you give us an idea, firstly, how much it's going to cost and who pays for it?
Yeah, basically the telecom providers, which I would like to, I don't want to mention any names, but however, they are like a consortium. It is not like one single ISPs which will be looking at these cables, but there are consortiums who are taking care of these cables for their smooth operations. But when the cables have been cut, these are like they need to pay the money to this consortium, and they do the repair along with these companies who can able to send their ships and repair with the help of the engineers on board. And this will not directly impacting to the customers, but as I mentioned earlier, it will come back to the customers. That is a tricky part of this particular problem.
And do we have any idea how much this kind of thing costs?
I'm not sure about exactly how much it will be impacting, but yeah, it costs a lot of money for the consortium to repair these cables. So that will directly impact on the customers.
Of course. Yeah. We obviously then mentioned that this happened in the Red Sea, just off the coast of Jeddah. And we felt the impact specifically here in the UAE. But where else in the world has the knock-on effect of internet connections happened?
There are three major cables which are passing through this Red Sea, which is basically on Mira EW3 and 4, which is basically affecting the Middle East and the Asian region and Europe. And another one cable which has been basically affecting the Middle East, especially Egypt and Iran and UAE. So these are the major areas where it will get affected at this particular point of time.
There's also been some knock-on effect in India, Pakistan as well.
Definitely, Asian cables are also been included in this MEAC EW3. So Middle East and Asian regions are completely getting affected. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about resilience and how to deal with something like this in the future, because this isn't the first time that subsea cables have been cut. What other kind of redundancy mechanisms are in place, like satellite, which obviously you work heavily in, and land-based fiber corridors and alternative subsea routes that are available?
In summum, this is not the first time that a cable has been cut in the Red Sea. There are many occasions these cables are also being cut due to ship anchorage and fishing issues. Example like 2022 Tonga cable cut that made that country without internet for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. So it is basically a huge issue, and it depends upon what we basically looking into this data from this particular system. And as I clearly mentioned, when there is a cable cut, it is going to affect the entire region by reducing or by increasing their latency, by transferring the data to other cables. It will definitely get affected.
And what role can kind of satellite-based internet play in all of this? That's what your team works on.
Yes.
on AMISAT.
Regarding the resilience part, we basically built upon satellites. But the satellite problem is, as I mentioned, I would like to have a backup system in place where we have a cable system as well as in an immediate backup. We would like to have a satellite to transmit the data. Government entities and governments are using these services. However, the problem with the satellites is that the capacity is very, very low as compared to what we have it in the cables. So if you look at the internet data transfer, the majority is about 90% or 97% of the internet data transfer is happening through these submarine cables. Only a few percentage is what been allocated to these particular satellites. And when you talk about the satellites, mostly I'll come back to the LEO second, but I'll talk about the major satellites which is able to transfer the internet data. So they have latency about 600 milliseconds. And in case of if you talk about Starlink or QPS satellites, they have about 20 to 50 milliseconds latency.
Okay.
So that is what basically the satellites. I'm not saying that they are not worth enough, but they do have. But the capability is very, very low. But when you are comparing to the cables, that can transfer about 220 terabits per second. So that is basically you will get in terms of milliseconds, 0.03 milliseconds.
And so why are these cables in the bottom of the sea? Why can they not be on land? Is that something that's been tried before, or?
Yes, they do have tried up, but the problem is that optical fibers should be kept down due to several reasons, and when it is kept on the top, there are many reasons by which there are chances that it get cuts, and obviously for that particular reason, that is why it is being kept on the seabeds, and which goes deep about you can say 2 to 8 kilometers or 2 to 6 kilometers. They will be deep down on the seabed, and it is being placed. And if you literally look at the cable which is being transferring the data, as I mentioned earlier, it is just a small diameter of your hair. That small it is, but that has been clubbed, and you have the protection that has been sheathing with the help of copper wires, and then some protectors will be provided to get amplify and to get the power output on the other side. And you have the landing ports which needs the power, so it is little bit cable assembly is little bit of tricky part. But if you literally look at the cable, optical fibers, they are small, very minute fibers.
Yeah. When you look at kind of governments, and particularly the UAE and other regional governments and telecom operators, should they be investing more in kind of redundancy, like building additional submarine routes, diversifying kind of landing points, or boosting satellite infrastructure? What should that investment look like from your perspective as someone who's in this field?
Yes, government is doing, and UAE is especially looking at this particular point, and they are already on a plan to enroute the cables through African regions, and there are many governments which are planning to have cables which is enrouting through these African regions. And as well as satellites, as I mentioned, the geostationary satellites, we are trying to increase the capability, but in case of LEO satellites, you need to have a higher constellations, you need to have more than, currently the beaming will not happen with the single satellite, so we need more satellites to beam the data and to transfer it to the ground station back to Earth, and to get the data transferred to the customer. So obviously the government is doing different alternative routes to lay down the cables, as well as they are trying to increase the capability by adding more satellites into the orbit. LEO at the moment, even the Starlink does not have any permission to operate in UAE, but in future I'm expecting that either by Starlink or OneWeb or QPR will very soon join the UAE market also.
That's something that the UAE is working fast on to do.
Exactly.
Dr. Sarath Raj, the project director at the Amity Dubai Satellite Ground Station, with us here on Mira Business FM, talking about, of course, the internet issues, the woes that we've all felt over the last week. One question I did want to ask you, Dr. Raj, is that whilst Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff has been poor over the last week, it feels like, well, I've been using my data a lot more, my 5G, particularly on my phone, and even sometimes hotspotting my laptop to my phone. This is just everyday people kind of doing that stuff. But also I'm finding that 5G is very, very slow. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, obviously the cable cut is one of the reasons, because the jamming is been happening through these cables, and when they send the data packets to these older cables, it takes some time, and the data needs to reach, and you will be able to receive it, but in a slower rate.
So when we're talking about internet, we're not just talking about your Wi-Fi connection, we're also talking about your internet connection on your phone, your 5G connection as well.
We talk about mobile or internet. Obviously, you talk about the internet towers, which has been kept on different locations. But ultimately, that tower is being connected to a particular cable. And if you look at UAE in particular, we have only 2 landing ports of cables, which are connecting to different parts of the world. One in the Jebel Ali and one in Ras Al Khaimah. Sorry, not Ras Al Khaimah. I think it's in Fujairah. These are the 2 landing ports we have it for internet at the moment in the UAE, and that is the reason why this particular delays are actually happening in the region.
Dr. Raj, we spoke initially a bit about how this happened, and there were suggestions that it could have been ship activity, an accident with an anchor, or something like that. There is, of course, a lot of speculation around this whole topic, whether such cable damage may have been accidental or related to kind of ongoing conflicts in the region. How do we differentiate between accidental and targeted cuts? And should there be potentially greater protection or regulation around subsea infrastructure?
Yeah, in summum, it is very clear that there are certain cables, or else it is a due to the geopolitical tension in the region of Red Sea, it could be a potential target for the enemy. So it is not like we can avoid that. Currently, our industry or our market is basically based on the oil economy, and how we protect this oil economy. As similar to that, we need to protect this data economy. That data economy completely relies on these cables, which has been put it from different region and or submarines or territorial waters. So as similar to that of our oil economy, our data economy is also as important as current generations are into it.
Dr. Sarath Raj, finally, for the average listener, what can they expect in the coming days or weeks regarding internet speeds, access to cloud services, or just general connectivity?
All the ISPs are taking care and rerouting these data packets. So I hope they will be looking and you will be experiencing more faster than the current speed of internet, and very soon this particular issue will get sorted out soon.
But still some potential issues, perhaps over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, definitely it will be there for sure, and it will take around, as I mentioned earlier, 2 to 6 weeks minimum. If as I mentioned, the consortium is moving forward and doing the works earlier, then this particular problem will get sorted out soon.
Look, I feel so much clearer, so much confident now that the internet will be back and running very soon. That's down to you. Thank you, Dr. Sarath Raj, who is updating us and keeping us informed. The project director at the Undersea Dubai Satellite Ground Station. All the insights into what went on in the Red Sea when these cables were cut, the impact that has had, and what work needs to be done now to get them fixed and get the UAE and the wider Middle East and Asia as well up and running again when it comes to the internet. Dr. Sarath Raj, thank you so much for your time today.